survivor, and he has graciously offered to spend some time with us this evening and tell us a little bit about his journey. Kim has his wife, Julia, and their 2 sons here with him today to offer their support. We welcome them also.
Thank you. I think that's good. Good evening. My name is Kim Burial, and I'm honored here to stand in front of you tonight. And I would like to thank the Relay for Life Committee and also Lale Swank for actually telling me to do it. I'm looking forward to it tonight. And also thank you to the American Cancer Society for having events like this. Cancer, such a short and also awful word. It means so much, and yet it says so little, because as all of you know, cancer is not just cancer. You have prostate cancer, and you have breast cancer. And even in these type of subgroups, you have various smaller cancers. In brain cancer, which is what I have, we talk about 5 major cancer types. And with these 5 types, there's more than 240 different tumors. So it's really no wonder that it's been so hard to find the cure. The type of brain tumor I have is called glioblastoma multiforme. It's a grade 4 type of cancer. It's currently considered incurable, and therefore it's treated as a chronic disease. Chronic disease means that the doctors right now not trying to cure it, but try to control it, so it won't grow any further. In the US alone, there's 17,000 people annually, or 500 people every day that gets this type of diagnosis. The 1-year survival rate is less than 5%, or 50%, sorry, and the 5-year survival rate is less than 3%. However, I learned fairly early on that I'm not a statistic. I refuse to accept them, and instead I used it as motivation in my fight against this cancer, because I'm not going to be beat. I just need to know what my odds are and how to beat them. How did my journey or our journey with cancer start? Well, we had been on vacation in Europe and had gotten back to the US. In my job, I was used to travel a lot, so crossing different time zones and dealing with jet lag was not a big issue. So the day after I came home, I went to work as usual. I got to work and I felt tired, but I thought that was probably just a lack of sleep. Got home at night, had a good night's sleep, and then went to work. Sometime during that day at work, I actually called Julia and said, something is not right. I can't put my finger on it, but I just don't feel right. And we said, okay, the day after, you go to the doctor. Well, Friday came, we went to see a doctor, and she immediately scheduled appointments down at Geisinger for Saturday. Actually, we woke up Saturday. I wasn't feeling 100%, but I was definitely feeling better than I had the day before. So we thought, okay, it's going to be something stress-related, and why don't we go out for lunch after we had the tests? So after the CAT scan, we were sitting in the waiting room, and we were joking around. And I just remember the nurse coming out and telling the receptionist, this man is going to get a phone call from a doctor, and then we have to take him to the emergency room. The CAT scan has found out that on my frontal lobe, they found an object the size of a golf ball. Later on, the MRI at the emergency room confirmed that finding. And when they confirmed that finding, the doctors told us that I had to have surgery the following day. As they told us, I actually looked at Julia and my boys, trying to hold back their tears. And that's still the hardest for me. There's no ways the boys, age 9 and 11, have to be brave on behalf of their father. As you can see, it's still the hardest for me. 10 days later, though, Julia and I went back to get the result of the biopsy. And 10 days, I can tell you, waiting 10 days is a long time. But you know it's not going to be good news if the conversation starts out like, did you guys ever meet our nurse coordinator? And Julia and I looked at each other and said, this is not good news. The thing was, the biopsy had shown that the tumor was malignant, but they didn't know what kind of tumor it was because it was inconclusive. Actually, the test results has shown that it was indicated it was a secondary tumor, which meant that somewhere else in my body there had to be a primary tumor. So instead of getting radiation treatment, which is the typical way to do it with a brain tumor, doctors wanted to have further tests so I could get specific treatment for that cancer I had. So the next several weeks, I had any kind of physical exams and scans that you could possibly imagine: physicals, CAT scans, ultrasounds, MRIs, and PET scans. But all of them came back inconclusive. There was no other tumor to be found. After 6 weeks of these tests, the doctor said, "No, it's now time to start the radiation treatment." So I have one last scan of the tumor site, and the day before, or the day after, we went down to have the mask fitted. We waited around in the waiting room for quite a while, and as we got in, the doctors looked surprised, and we soon knew why. They told us that the tumor had grown back in 6 weeks. 2 days later, on August 10th, I had the second surgery. And Dr. Lacroix, who was my neuro-oncology surgeon, he came out and said, I removed the whole tumor, and as he said, I took out a little more. To this day, when I screw up, Julia says, "That's the little extra." But in those 4 months that we actually had, even though I had surgery, that tumor was also sent out for a lab test, but that also came back inconclusive. In fact, it was not until after 4 months after the first surgery that it was finally diagnosed as a glioblastoma multiforme. In those 4 months, Julia and I had the opportunity to research a lot on the internet, and we found this thing called the NoCure device, which was actually on a clinical trial around the USA. As you can see right now, I'm wearing electrodes on my head, and they're attached to a machine and a battery that I carry in my backpack. When it's turned on, they generate an electromagnetic field that actually pulls cancer cells apart when they try to divide before they can sustain themselves. Thereby, it's controlling and limiting further growth of the tumor. The device I'm supposed to wear 21 hours a day, and those who know me, they know actually that it can have quite a dark sense of humor. So the device contains also, an error, and it beeps with it if I'm out of battery, if there's an error. If I'm in the middle of a conversation with a person and it starts beeping, I just go. Yeah, that's typically either shock or that kind of reaction I get. I am a bit surprised when I walk around because I don't get a lot of questions about what I'm wearing. Instead, I actually get a lot of people that assume that they know what it is. Last year, there was a guy that came up to me and said, "I know what that is. My daughter's going to get one of those." I said, "I hope not." He thought I was on a sleep study, and that's what we commonly hear. Earlier this spring, we were at a basketball tournament, and we actually heard a new one. I was walking in a Rite Aid, and I went up to the cash register, and I had to pay, and the shop assistant said, "What is that? Is that some kind of hearing aid?" And I went, "What did you say?" So the point is, if you gotta wear it for 21 hours a day, I might as well have some fun with it. Okay. And also, as you can hear from my accent, I'm not from Pennsylvania. We moved here from North Carolina, if you can't tell. But we are originally also from Europe. And while I had my first surgery, Julia had done a great job in informing our immediate family of our situation. However, we had hoped that the biopsy 10 days later would show that it would be a benign tumor, so we had not chosen to tell the rest of the family. Nicholas and Philip are fortunate that they have a lot of great-grandparents alive. So now we had to inform these that I did indeed have a brain tumor. All of these are in the 90s. And actually, as we have been on vacation, we actually have, my maternal grandmother turned 90, and we actually had the opportunity to celebrate her 19th birthday with her before my diagnosis. It was also clear to me that she had become quite frail, and we had always had this special kind of bond. So when I had to call her and tell her that I had brain tumor, I was afraid it was going to devastate her. And I actually asked a family member to be with her when I told her the news. But my grandmother can be quite surprising. Instead of being devastated, she took the news really well and said, Kim, you know what? After World War II, I was diagnosed with tuberculosis of the lungs and the bones. Granted, it's not cancer, but at that time it was considered incurable. The doctors gave me less than 6 months to live. That's almost 17 years ago. And you know what? I'm still here, and the doctors are no longer here. I'm sure that's going to be the same with you. So you see, instead of devastating her, she was actually now the person that picked me up. Sometime within the 4 months we were waiting for the diagnosis, I just got frustrated. There's one thing I don't like is just sit around and wait. I can't do nothing. So we researched again on the internet, and we started to look into nutrition and diet in general and the impact on cancer. So I the first thing I did, cut out sugar, cut out processed food, no more white breads. And later on, I actually also started coming back on meat and dairy products. Granted, you know, I've still fall in, and when I do, I enjoy it tremendously. But the point is, I actually eat a lot healthier than before my diagnosis. I also exercise more regularly again. I go to the gym 3 times a week, run twice, and as Terry knows, I do yoga once. Those who know my limited flexibility, they also know that yoga and me is not a pretty sight. And speaking about pretty sight, last year I took the exercise so far that when I had to have inpatient chemo down in Geisinger due to an occurrence, I actually walked the halls of Geisinger. As you can see, I'm a little taller than the average person, and I definitely do not fit a hospital gown. They also gave me pants, so imagine that you go into the hospital right now because you are going to visit a family member, another patient. The first thing you see is a 6'9" tall guy wearing around in a gown that's too short, pants that look like Bermuda pants, and those white, sexy white compression socks. Imagine then, add to that, you got the chemo here, and then I have the electrodes. So I'm a little bit surprised there was no more people be admitted to the ER for heart failure. To us, the worst thing about telling people about cancer was not really to see the shock in their faces, but to hear the pity, oh! We just could not stand that. That drove us crazy. The way I look at it is pity and self-pity doesn't help. It's a fight. You got to pull yourself together and you have a fight. The way I see it, essentially is you get 2 choices, right? You can choose to fight or you can choose to give up. If you choose to fight, you got another choice. You can have a positive attitude about it, or you can be bitter. In my opinion, if you become bitter, you might beat the disease, but cancer has still won. One of the best ways to get support, though, is still through support groups, in my opinion. We actually founded a support group for Novacure patients. We come from all different walks of life. We are of different ages, but we have 2 things in common. We have the glioblastoma multiforme, and we have the device. The first meetings were full of tears because we felt we had a forum that we could meet and let our anxiety and emotions out. But that soon after turned into laughter and having a good time and sharing opinion. We actually gotten so far now that we don't meet in a hospital anymore. We meet in a brewery. The food is good, the beer is even better, and so is the music. We still share each other's pain if we have a setback, but that doesn't happen too much anymore. We meet on a Sunday, and our nurse, Angela Whitmere, is always there. To me, that's going beyond her duty as a nurse, above and beyond her duty as a nurse. And that really means a lot, not only to me, but also, and Julia, but also to the other Novacure patients. Has there been anything good about getting cancer? Well, as I told you, I used to travel a lot. So while I was hanging out in Sydney or Rio or Dubai, Julia was shoveling snow here. And that sounds like a joke, but it's actually true. So now we spend more time together as a family, and we even got a snowblower, so we can spend even more time. Besides spending more time together, the most positive thing about getting cancer is actually all the support and goodwill that we have gotten from our local friends and people that we didn't expect it. There's too many of you to mention all of you by name, but even if we haven't taken up your offer on help, it doesn't mean that we don't appreciate it. Believe me, we do appreciate every call, every email, text, prayer, and encouragement we have gotten over these last 2 years. I'm currently not working, but I've had more support from my company than I could have ever imagined. And I'd actually like to thank my boss, John Knackley, and also the women of the finance department for keep reminding me that I have not been forgotten. So what do I think is the most negative experience about having cancer? It's good long-time friends that suddenly shy away. And I know that people can handle illness well. All people can handle illness well. And on good days I say, that's okay. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed. Because to me, that's the mere definition of friendship, is to be there when your friend needs you. And in all honesty, I thought our friendships were stronger than this and could handle such a thing as cancer. Am I different than other cancer patients? I don't know. I think I've been told that I've never had a why me moment. And I remember on one of my first walks, Julia asked me that question. And I said, no, I don't have those thoughts. And I think I knew that we were in for a longer fight and that pity just doesn't help. I remember also, as I had the PET scan, I was sitting next to a very sweet lady of 77. And she was actually saying at that point, you know, she was in for a PET scan for lung cancer. And she told me, when I heard that news, I thought my world was going to cave in. And I said to her, thought to myself, it doesn't really matter now if you have 3 months left or 20 years, cancer has still won. Because there's so many positive things that we are fighting for. So even if you have 3 months left, why not enjoy it? Why be depressed about it? To me, that whole thing about the positive is very, very important. I have a family member I found this out in my home country of Denmark, that also has cancer. And when I contacted her, she actually came back to me and said, hi Kim, I'm in the process of being cured of cancer. And I thought to myself, what a wonderful positive sentence. If you say I'm being treated for it, well, the outcome could be, positive, it could be cured, or it could be negative, and I don't want to talk about that. Whereas cured implied one thing, a positive outcome, and I think it's so important to have a positive attitude. As I'm ending my speech, please allow me to address a few people that have had a tremendous impact on my life and also on the last 2 years. The first one is my dad. Dad, you and I lost Mom way too early, and I know that with your own health issues, life has not been easy on you. I cannot even imagine what it must be like for you to sit so far away and follow my battle with cancer. I want you to know that I'm grateful for my upbringing, especially that you never tried to hold me back, but encouraged me to pursue things such as study in Australia and England, and also to work in Germany, Switzerland, and now in the US, even if it meant I would be very far from you. Dad, I love you. Nicholas and Philip, I know that you feel that I have less patience with you now since my diagnosis, and I think you're right. But when I watch you, I see your talents, your strengths, and your weaknesses. And part of my role as a parent is to help you develop your strengths, but also address your weaknesses. And sometimes I think even though I feel that I'm going to beat this cancer, subconsciously there must have been some, let's say, some doubt in my mind. And you had never done anything wrong, but I was trying to address one of the weaknesses. But I want both of you tonight, Nicholas and Philip, to know I'm tremendously proud of you. And I love you more than life itself. And as I'm ending my speech, I'd like to thank my, excuse me, wonderful, loving and supporting wife, Julia. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. And I know I do not do a good enough job to say that I love you, but I do love you. I don't know if you know it, but tonight actually, it's 14 years and 90 days since you and I stood on top of the Eiffel Tower. And I went down my knee, and as I did that, there was 1,000 Japanese taking pictures. And I actually said, "Do you want to marry me?" Luckily, you said yes. And then 5 times you asked me if I really meant it. I do mean it, and I'm grateful that you said yes. In the year and a half I actually took before we got married, I promise you the next 80 years of my life. As of today, I still owe you 67 years. I want you to know I'm gonna do everything I can to try to keep that promise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kim and your family. You're quite the inspiration to all of us. We appreciate you being here with us tonight. Thank you.